In some quiet corner inside you, a small child is still sitting on the floor, knees pulled to the chest, holding something that once mattered more than the world. And even now, after all these years, that child still lifts their head whenever you pass by in thought, as if hoping you might finally come back. Maybe you don't remember the room where you left them. Maybe life became too loud, too fast, too demanding, and somewhere along the way you stopped noticing the soft knocking that came from the oldest door inside your chest. But the child never left. They never learned to stop waiting. They still believe you will return. And if you close your eyes for long enough, maybe, just maybe, you can hear it. That faint echo of someone rearranging old memories, brushing the dust off abandoned dreams, trying to understand why you took so long. It's strange, isn't it? How you grew up, how you adapted, how you survived, yet a part of you remained exactly the same size as the day you first felt alone. What was the moment? Was it the afternoon when no one noticed your tears? The night when the house felt too big and you felt too small? The day you learned to stay quiet because speaking didn't change anything? There are pieces of your story that only your child self remembers. They hold them carefully, like cracked marbles in tiny hands, afraid they might break if dropped, afraid they might disappear if shared. That's why the child kept them hidden all these years. Not out of fear of you, but out of the desperate hope that when you finally came back you'd recognize them. Imagine that room for a moment. The faded wallpaper, the toys that were never truly toys, but companions. The drawing taped crookedly on the wall, the one you swore you'd finish someday. The small bed where you once dreamed without fear. The window where you waited for footsteps that never came. Everything in that room has been waiting with the child, frozen in a gentle sadness, untouched by the life you built outside those walls. And you learned to hide your own softness. You learned to wake up early, to be strong, to carry the world on your shoulders. You learned to smile even when your chest ached. You learned to give more than you had, because somewhere along the way you believed that earning love was the only way to not lose it. But the child inside you knows the truth you forget. You were never supposed to prove your worth. You were only supposed to be held. Still, life kept happening. Bills, expectations, heartbreaks, disappointments, the weight of being the adult you needed when you were younger. And in all of that, the child slipped further into the background. Not because you abandoned them consciously, but because you were trying to survive. Yet survival has a way of quieting the most fragile parts of us, until they become ghosts inside our own bones. Sometimes the child tries to reach you, in the sudden fear of being left out, in the sting you feel when someone raises their voice, in the way your heart races when you disappoint someone, in the way silence feels heavier than it should, in the nights when you cry and don't know why. Those are not weaknesses. Those are messages, whispers from the room you've avoided for years, because deep down, that child is not angry at you. They're not blaming you for forgetting them. They're simply waiting for you to stop running, waiting for you to remember the softness you buried, waiting for you to walk back through the long hallway of your own history, waiting for you to turn the handle of that old door, waiting for you to sit down on the floor next to them and say, "I'm here now." Maybe you think you don't deserve that reunion. Maybe you think it's too late. But the child inside you doesn't understand time the way adults do. To them, you left yesterday. To them, you can still come back today. And if you listen closely enough, if you let the noise of your adult world fade just a little, you might feel the memory rising. A small hand reaching out through the years, trembling not from fear, but from hope. Because hope is something children hold on to with a strength adults often forget. What would happen if you followed that hand? What would you see if you let yourself walk into that forgotten room? Would you recognize the eyes looking back at you? Would you kneel down? Would you touch their hair the way no one touched yours? Would you finally tell them that none of what happened was their fault? The child inside you doesn't need you to fix the past. They don't need explanations or apologies. They need presence. They need warmth. They need the adult you became to do the one thing no one else ever did. Stay. Stay long enough for the shaking to stop. Stay long enough for the tears to soften. Stay long enough for that little heartbeat to believe again. Stay long enough for them to uncurl their small hands and offer you the pieces of the story they kept safe all this time. Because those pieces, the broken marbles, the unfinished drawings, the forgotten dreams, They were never meant to be left there. They were meant to return to you. And maybe that's why you feel empty sometimes. Maybe that's why life feels heavier than it should, because you've been walking without the part of you that knows how to feel joy without guilt, without the part that knows how to love without fear, without the part that remembers who you were before you learned to pretend. But that child remembers. They remember the laughter that came easily. They remember the imagination that filled the world with colors. They remember the way your heart used to open without hesitation. They remember the softness you hid so the world wouldn't break it. And they remember you, the real you, the one you've been trying to find again. So maybe this chapter is not about going backwards. Maybe it's about going inward, about realizing that the child inside you was never lost, just waiting behind a door you stopped knocking on. And now, you're here, standing at the threshold, hearing your own breath soften as you reach toward the doorknob, feeling something old and tender awaken in your chest. Because the truth is simple, and it's been calling you for a long time. The child inside you is still waiting for you to come back. Not to fix them, not to save them, just to hold them, the way you always needed someone to hold you. And maybe, just maybe, this time, you won't walk away. There is a moment, quiet and nearly invisible, when you realize that the smallest things you lost along the way weren't just objects. They were pieces of yourself, pieces you didn't notice slipping through your fingers because you were too busy growing, too busy surviving, too busy pretending that you no longer needed what once made you feel whole. If you close your eyes gently, you might see it. That old shoebox tucked somewhere in the memory of your past. The one filled with drawings you never showed anyone. The one filled with tiny treasures only a child could see value in. A broken crayon, a pebble shaped like a heart, a sticker you were saving for something special. It's strange how these things, forgotten in the world outside, still live with perfect clarity in the world inside you. Maybe you don't remember the last time you touched that box. Maybe you don't remember the moment you placed it down and walked away. But there must have been an afternoon, maybe after a disappointment, maybe after a silence too heavy to question, when you decided that childish things belonged in a drawer, and that drawer had to stay closed if you ever wanted to be taken seriously. And so you closed it. You closed it with the kind of determination only a child desperate to be accepted can have. But the box waited. The drawings waited. Your child self waited. Time, however, has a way of rearranging everything around you while leaving some things inside you untouched. And the things you lost, the little ones, the quiet ones, the ones no one else would remember, became shadows that followed you into adulthood. Think about the laugh you used to have. Not the one you practice now, the polite one, the one that sounds right in a room full of adults. No, the real one, the messy one, the one that came from your belly and made your eyes squeeze shut. Where did it go? Or that feeling you used to have when you ran without thinking, barefoot, trusting the earth beneath you? When did you start running only inside your mind and always away from something? Or that tiny belief, the one you held so tenderly, that someone would always come for you when you needed it? When did it fade? When did it turn into self-reliance sharpened by fear? Sometimes the things we lose do not disappear. They hide. They hide in the way your heart tenses when someone raises their voice, in the way you apologize too quickly, in the way you say, "It's fine," even when something inside you tightens like a thread about to snap, in the way you feel lonely even around people. These are not flaws, they are echoes. Echoes of a child who once asked softly, "Will you stay?" and didn't get an answer strong enough to believe in. There is a tenderness in remembering the small things. Her tenderness that hurts in a soft, aching way, because once you remember them, you also remember what they meant. The stuffed animal that lost an ear after years of being held at night wasn't just a toy. It was the only thing that stayed when the world felt too big. The drawings with colors that went outside the lines weren't mistakes. They were the only place you felt free. The mud pies, the imaginary friends, the chalk drawings on the sidewalk, they weren't silly. They were evidence of the magic you carried before someone told you magic was childish. And maybe that's the part that still stings in the present. Not that you lost those things, but that you were taught to let them go long before you were ready. So you grew up. You tucked away your softness. You traded wonder for caution. You traded dreams for responsibilities. You traded trust for self-defense. But inside, your child self kept everything. Every laugh, every tear, every moment of wonder, every moment of fear. They protected all the parts you thought you had to abandon to become acceptable. And now, as an adult, you find yourself longing for something you can't quite name. A feeling, a color, a moment. Something pure, something warm, something you once had without knowing how precious it was. It's not immaturity. It's memory. Sometimes when life gets quiet for a second, in the car, at a red light, in the shower, in the moment before sleep, you feel it. That tug, that faint pull towards something softer, something truer, something you think you grew out of but never truly did. It's the child inside you asking, "Do you remember who we were before the world got so heavy?" You might answer silently, "I'm trying." And the truth is, you are. Each time you feel inexplicably sad over something small, you are remembering. Each time you feel overwhelmed by a simple request, you are remembering. Each time someone's tone makes your chest tighten, you are remembering. Each time you long for someone to hold you without asking why, you are remembering. These moments aren't weaknesses, they're invitations. Little reminders that you left parts of yourself behind, and it's finally time to go back for them. But going back isn't easy. There's a drawer in your mind that you haven't opened in years. And you're afraid of what you'll find. Afraid that the child inside will be disappointed. Afraid that you'll feel foolish for missing something you were told to forget. Afraid that opening that drawer will bring back the hurt you've spent your entire adulthood outrunning. But the truth is softer than your fear. The things you lost are not angry at you. They are not broken. They are simply waiting to be held again. Imagine picking up that old drawing, the lines shaky, the colors uneven. Imagine holding it gently, understanding that it was the best you could do with the heart you had at the time. Now imagine treating your memories with the same tenderness. The truth is, the small things weren't small at all. Your favorite cartoon wasn't just entertainment. It was your escape. Your favorite hiding spot wasn't just a corner. It was your sanctuary. Your favorite teacher wasn't just an adult. They were the first person who made you feel seen. Your imaginary world wasn't just pretend. It was where you practiced feeling safe. These pieces matter because they are the places where your heart first learned how to beat. Maybe this is why adulthood feels so heavy sometimes. You're living without the pieces that once made you feel whole. You think you miss places, people, moments, but what you're truly missing is yourself. The self who believed without hesitation. The self who asked for help without shame. The self who cried easily because tears were honest. The self who loved without checking if it was safe. Those versions of you didn't leave. They're waiting in the shadows of your memory, hoping you'll turn around and notice them. And maybe this chapter is your first step back. Back to the shoebox, back to the drawings, back to the laughter, back to the softness you weren't supposed to lose, back to the pieces you abandoned to survive, the ones you now need to truly live. Because one day, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, you will finally open that drawer inside you, and you will see that the things you lost have been sitting patiently in the dim light, untouched by the years, not ruined, not forgotten, just waiting. The same way the child inside you has been waiting. Waiting for you to remember that you were once whole. Waiting for you to gather the pieces gently. Waiting for you to say, "I didn't know how to come back before, but I'm here now." And in that moment, that quiet, trembling, beautiful moment, the smallest things you lost along the way will find their way home again. Back to you. There is a weight you carry that no one can see. It lives beneath your ribs, in the quiet spaces between each breath, in the way your shoulders rise just a little tighter when someone looks at you for a second too long. You've learned to call it stress, anxiety, overthinking, but deep down you know it's older than adulthood. It's a voice that was born long before you learned the language of grown-ups. A voice that whispers gently and persistently, "Please don't leave me again." The echoes of your childhood don't vanish just because you grew tall. They weave themselves into your reactions, your fears, your silences. They inhabit your habits, those small unconscious patterns you follow without knowing why. And sometimes, when life brushes too close to the oldest hurt you carry, those echoes turn into thunder inside you. It's in the way you brace yourself when someone sounds disappointed, in the way your heart sinks when your phone buzzes unexpectedly, in the way you replay conversations for hours, searching for the part where you think you messed up, in the way you say yes, even when your bones ache for a no, in the way you shrink just a little when someone raises their eyebrows, in the way you feel guilt simply for taking up space. These behaviors are not flaws. They are imprints. They are the marks left by the moments you felt small, unprotected, unseen. Moments when no one explained that your emotions were allowed to exist. Moments when you learned, without understanding what you were learning, that love could be conditional and safety could disappear without warning. You grew up, yes. You became strong, capable, responsible. But strength built from childhood wounds has a particular taste. Quiet, cautious, always scanning the room for signs of danger that may never come. You've become so used to carrying this weight that you barely notice it anymore. Yet some part of you still trembles when people walk away too quickly or when they stay too long. There's a part of you that expects abandonment even in safe places. A part that expects rejection even in gentle voices. A part that expects disappointment even in moments of joy. And that part isn't irrational. It's remembering. Because memory isn't just a story you can tell. It's a sensation. It lives in the body. It lives in the heartbeat. It lives in the way your breath catches when you feel misunderstood. It lives in the tightness in your chest when someone asks, "Are you okay?" and you don't know how to answer honestly. Sometimes when someone raises their voice, even slightly, you feel younger than you should. As if time folds and suddenly you're standing in a doorway you haven't seen in years, hearing the tone that made you feel responsible for someone else's storm. Sometimes when someone ignores you for too long, your mind fills the silence with stories that have nothing to do with the present and everything to do with the past. Sometimes when someone praises you, you flinch inside, waiting for the but that used to follow. These moments don't mean you're broken. They mean you've been shaped by a childhood where softness had consequences, shaped by a world that didn't always know how to hold you, shaped by adults who were too wounded themselves to recognize the wounds they were creating. And now, as an adult, you find yourself reacting to ghosts. Not the ghosts of people, but the ghosts of feelings. The ghost of not being enough. The ghost of being too much. The ghost of waiting for love that arrived late or didn't arrive at all. The ghost of walking on tiptoes around unpredictable emotions. The ghost of believing you had to earn your place. The ghost of shrinking to avoid conflict. The ghost of learning to silence yourself to maintain peace. These ghosts whisper in your daily life. They whisper in the hesitation before you speak, in the apology you offer before you've done anything wrong, in the fear of burdening others with your needs, in the way you push down tears until they come out at night, quietly when no one is watching. And maybe you've wondered why you react so strongly to things that seem small, why a forgotten message can feel like abandonment, why a harsh tone can feel like danger, why a simple mistake can feel like the end of something important, why affection feels both comforting and terrifying, why opening up feels like peeling your skin back inch by inch. It's because your child self experienced big emotions in a small body. And that body didn't forget. The adult you became has logic. The child inside you has memory. And when those two meet, they argue. Your adult mind says, "This is fine." Your child self whispers, "This feels familiar." Guess and familiar once meant pain. You're not overreacting. You're responding to history. A history woven into the fibers of who you are. A history that the world never saw because your pain was quiet. A history written in moments too subtle for outsiders to notice. The look that made you feel like a burden. The sigh that made you feel like a failure. The silence that made you feel invisible. You learned to protect yourself in ways no one ever taught you. You learned to read emotions like weather reports. You learned to predict storms from the slightest shifts. You learned to comfort others before they asked, hoping it would keep the house calm. You learned to disappear just enough to avoid conflict. You learned to survive in rooms where your feelings were too big for the space they were given. And now, even as an adult, part of you still operates by those old rules. Not because you want to, but because those rules once kept you safe. Your anxiety is not immaturity, it's loyalty to your younger self, loyalty to the child who had no one else to defend them, loyalty to the feelings that were too heavy for such tiny arms, loyalty to the moments when silence was safer than truth, But here's something soft, something gentle, something true. You are not that helpless child anymore. You are not trapped in that old room. You are not living under those old conditions. You are allowed to feel without fear now. You are allowed to need without shame. You are allowed to speak without trembling. Yet the child inside you doesn't know that, unless you tell them, unless you show them, unless you kneel beside them in the memories that still hurt and whisper, "It's different now, you're safe with me." Because healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means revisiting the old echoes with new hands. Hands that are steadier, hands that are gentler, hands that belong to the adult you've become, the one who finally has the strength to protect the child you once were. You don't need to silence the echoes. You don't need to fix the patterns. You don't need to force yourself to react differently. You only need to understand where it all began. Because once you see the origin, the pattern no longer controls you. It becomes something softer, a memory asking to be acknowledged, a feeling asking to be held, a child asking for someone to finally say, "I see you." And maybe, and for the first time in your life, you can be the one who answers. There is a door inside you that you haven't touched in years. It stands at the end of a long hallway made of memories you walk past every day without noticing. You know it's there. You've always known. And yet, something in you learned to avoid it, the way a child avoids a dark room because they're not sure what waits on the other side. Tonight, though, something feels different. Maybe it's the quiet in your chest. Maybe it's the exhaustion of carrying a weight that never belonged to an adult. Maybe it's the soft tug from somewhere deep within, a tug you've ignored for far too long. Whatever the reason, you find yourself standing before that door. The wood looks older than you remember, the handle colder, the silence heavier. For a moment, your breath trembles. Not from fear of what you'll see, but from fear of what you'll feel. You lift your hand, hesitating in the space between wanting to know and wanting to forget. And then, with a slow exhale, your fingers wrap around the handle. It turns more easily than you expect, as if the door was never locked, just waiting for you to be ready. It opens. And there, in the soft dusk-like glow of a room untouched by time, sits the child you used to be. They're smaller than you remember, smaller than your heart was prepared for. Knees pulled to their chest, arms wrapped around their legs, head resting against a wall that looks too big for them. You take a step inside. The floorboards creak and their head lifts, slowly, cautiously, like someone hearing footsteps they've dreamed of for years. They look at you, not with anger, not with blame, but with a question so fragile it makes your chest ache. "Did you come back for me?" You try to speak, but your throat closes. Because how do you explain that you didn't leave on purpose, that you didn't forget because you wanted to? That adulthood pulled you away like a tide, dragging you into responsibilities, expectations, and storms they were never meant to face alone. You take another step. The room feels familiar in ways that are painful and comforting at the same time. The corners hold the shadows of old fears. The air carries the silence of unanswered questions. The floor is littered with fragments of moments you buried, drawings you made when hope still felt possible, toys that were more loyal than people, torn pages from notebooks where you tried to make sense of things no child should have to understand. The child watches you, eyes wide with something between hope and disbelief. You kneel. It takes effort, not physical effort, but emotional effort, because kneeling means lowering yourself to the level of a version of you who was never given the chance to stand tall, and now you're face to face. Up close, you see details you forgot, the way their hands fidget, the way their shoulders curl inward, the way they keep glancing at the door as if afraid you might disappear again. You realize in that moment that the child never learned closure, only waiting. Waiting for someone to explain, waiting for someone to protect them, waiting for someone to stay. You swallow, your voice barely a whisper. "I'm here." Their eyes soften, and something inside you breaks, not in a painful way, but in a way that feels like thawing. You reach out slowly, giving them time to pull away. They don't. They only blink, like they're trying to confirm that this is real. When your hand touches theirs, the room changes, not visibly, not dramatically. But something shifts in the atmosphere, a subtle exhale from the walls, as if the whole space had been holding its breath for years. The child's fingers tighten around yours, not desperately, but with the kind of trust that feels sacred. You sit beside them. For a moment, neither of you speaks. You simply share the same quiet, the same air, the same heartbeat that split into two timelines long ago. The child who stayed and the adult who kept running. Eventually, they lean their head against your arm. The gesture is small, but the meaning is enormous. It's the first time they've allowed themselves to rest, to let someone older, stronger, gentler, carry part of the weight they held alone for so long. You don't tell them you're sorry. You don't tell them you should have returned earlier. Children don't need explanations. They need presence. And so you give them that. Your fingers brush a strand of hair from their forehead. They look up at you with an expression that feels like a question and an answer at the same time. Are you going to stay? You feel the old instinct rise, the instinct to promise too much, to fix everything at once, to offer words you might not keep. But adulthood has taught you something important. Real staying isn't spoken, it's shown. So you take their hand again, gently but firmly, and you whisper the only truth that matters. I'm not leaving. The child exhales a long, trembling breath, the kind that comes from a chest that has held too much for too long. Their shoulders drop, their body softens, and you realize you're witnessing something sacred, the moment a child finally feels safe. You look around the room with new eyes. It isn't a place of abandonment, it's a place of preservation. A room that kept your softness intact while the world tried to harden you. A room where your tears dried without comfort. A room where your hopes whispered themselves to sleep. A room where your heart waited for your return. And now, here you are. Not as a stranger, not as a visitor, but as the one who was always meant to come back. The child shifts closer, resting their small hand against your chest. They close their eyes, listening to a heartbeat that sounds different from the one they remember. Steadier, slower, stronger. For the first time, they understand something you never realized you needed to tell them. You grew. You survived. You made it. And you came back. You wrap your arm gently around their shoulders. They fit perfectly there, like they were always meant to. Like your adult body was built, not just to carry the world, but to carry them too. Time seems to dissolve. The room feels warmer, the air softer, the silence kinder. It's not a dramatic reunion. It's not cinematic. It's not loud. It's intimate, quiet, tender, true. A healing not made of words but of presence. A mending not made of fixes but of being there. A love not given to you but rediscovered within you. The child shifts slightly and asks, in a whisper only you could hear, "Can I come with you now?" You close your eyes. Not because you're unsure, but because the emotion rises too quickly, too deeply. You inhale slowly, letting the warmth settle into every part of your chest. Yes, you breathe. Yes, you can. Their hand slips into yours again, small, warm, trusting. And for the first time in your life, you feel whole. Not because your wounds disappeared, but because the version of you who carried them alone no longer has to. Together, you stand. Together, you walk toward the door. And as you step out of the room that held your childhood pain, your unsaid feelings, your quiet courage, something gentle follows behind you like a soft light. The feeling of finally being reunited with the part of yourself that never stopped waiting. And the hallway that once felt long and dark now feels like a path home. A path the two of you will walk side by side, not as past and present, but as one. There is a strange stillness that comes after a long journey home. Not the kind of home made of walls and furniture, but the quiet place inside you that you forgot how to enter. When you step back into yourself after years of being elsewhere, in expectations, in roles, in fears, there is a sense of unfamiliar familiarity, as if you are returning to a house you once lived in, but left without packing your things. This is what it feels like now, walking through the hallway with the child's hand in yours. The air around you seems lighter, though neither of you says anything. Sometimes healing doesn't begin with grand declarations. Sometimes it begins with silence, a silence that isn't empty but full of all the things you were never allowed to feel, full of all the emotions you pressed down so deeply that now in the quiet, they rise like dust shaken from an old shelf. You walk slowly, not because the path is long, but because your heart is adjusting to the weight of being whole again. There is something sacred about moving forward, with a piece of yourself you once thought you had lost forever. And every step feels like a soft apology, not spoken with guilt, but held with tenderness. The child looks up at you from time to time, as if checking whether you're still there. And each time you meet their gaze with a softness that surprises even you. Because now you understand what you didn't before. You are not just looking at a younger version of yourself, you are looking at the origin of everything you still feel, the fears, the hopes, the longing, the ache to be understood, the exhaustion from pretending, the dream of being loved without conditions, all of it lived in that child first. And as you walk, you realize the truth with a clarity that almost makes your knees buckle. You were never broken, you were just carrying too much alone. The child squeezes your hand, sensing your shift, and the gesture pulls you deeper into the moment. You pause, letting them stand in front of you. Their eyes shimmer with something that looks like both relief and uncertainty. It's the expression of someone who has lived in waiting for too long. You kneel once more, not out of duty but out of reverence. Because this child, this small trembling piece of you, held the weight of emotions no child should ever have had to carry. They endured the loneliness you never admitted, the confusion you buried beneath smiles, the tears that dried quietly on pillowcases no one checked. "You did so well," you whisper. The words feel fragile, like they're resting on the edge of breaking, but they're true in a way that shakes your soul. The child's lip trembles, not from sadness but from release, the release of being finally seen, finally acknowledged, finally held without needing to earn it. And then something shifts again, gently. The hallway fades behind you both, and what rises before you is not a place but a sensation. Warmth. A slow, glowing warmth, like sunlight pressing through curtains on a morning when the world is quiet enough for you to breathe without rushing. You take the child's other hand now, holding them fully, and something inside you settles. The ache that lived between your ribs softens. The tension in your shoulders loosens. The pressure behind your eyes eases. It's not that the pain disappears, it's that you're no longer holding it alone. You stand again, guiding the child toward the world that once felt too big for them. The hallway opens into a space neither of you recognize, yet both somehow know. It is spacious but not empty, bright but not overwhelming, warm but not scorching. It feels like the part of you that always wanted to emerge but never had permission. "This is ours," you say softly. The child looks around with wide, curious eyes. "All of it?" "Yes, all of it." There is a pause, a long, meaningful pause, as the child tries to understand what it means to finally belong somewhere, especially somewhere within you. You walk further in, and as you do, you sense the layers of adulthood loosening their grip, the perfectionism, the fear of disappointing others, the constant scanning for emotional danger, the belief that you have to earn your place in people's hearts. All of these habits begin to soften, their sharp edges dulling as your inner landscape rearranges itself around this reunion. The child sits on the floor, legs crossed in a way only children sit comfortably. They look up at you with an expression that is both playful and serious. "Are we safe now?" You breathe in, you breathe out, and then you kneel once more, a gesture that has become both natural and necessary. "Yes," you tell them, "we're safe now." Not because life is suddenly easy, not because the world changed, but because you are no longer abandoning the part of you that feels. The child nods slowly, absorbing your words as if they are learning a new language, one where love doesn't disappear and presence isn't temporary. They reach into their pocket and take out something small. It's a piece of folded paper, worn at the edges, soft from being touched too many times. They offer it to you, their hand trembling just a little. You open it carefully. Inside, there are words written in uneven, childish handwriting. Words you once wrote but forgot you ever dared to say. "I want someone to stay." You inhale sharply. It feels like a memory slipping into your lungs and settling there. The child whispers, "I kept it." Of course they did. They kept everything you weren't ready to face. Every dream you set aside, every emotion you swallowed, every tear you silently wiped away, every hope you buried beneath responsibility. They didn't keep these things out of fear. They kept them out of faith. Faith that one day you would return. Faith that one day you would be strong enough to take them back. Faith that one day you would choose yourself. And today, you did. You fold the paper gently, holding it against your chest. "Thank you," you whisper, your voice cracking. The child crawls into your lap, their movements small and cautious, as if they're still afraid they might take up too much space. But you wrap your arms around them without hesitation, without reservation, without fear. They melt into you, not as a separate being, but as a part of you that was waiting to come home. In that moment, something extraordinary happens. Your heartbeat changes. It becomes fuller, steadier, more grounded, because now it beats for two versions of you, the one who lived through the past and the one who's ready to live differently. You close your eyes, holding the child against your chest, feeling the warmth of their small body blending into yours. And slowly, gently, they begin to fade, not disappear, not vanish, but merge. You feel them becoming part of your breath, your pulse, your thoughts, your softness. You feel them settling into the spaces inside you that were once hollow. You feel them filling the rooms that felt abandoned. You feel them whispering through your emotions, not as fear, but as truth. You are not losing them. You are reclaiming them. They are becoming you again. When you finally open your eyes, you're alone, but not lonely. The warmth remains, the softness remains, the presence remains. You place a hand over your chest. It feels different now, alive in a new way, quiet in a deeper way, whole in a way you've never felt before. You breathe in slowly, letting the air fill the newly recovered spaces inside you, and you whisper into the stillness, not to the child, but to yourself. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." And maybe that's what returning home truly means. Not fixing the past, not erasing the pain, not pretending everything is healed, but finally, staying with yourself. Staying with the part of you that once waited behind a closed door. Staying with the softest part of your heart. Staying long enough to feel safe inside your own skin. Staying long enough to grow without abandoning where you came from. Staying long enough for your own presence to become the love you always needed. The child inside you is no longer waiting. They're home, and so are you. There is a silence that comes after healing, not an empty one, but a warm, steady quiet that feels like the inside of a long-held breath finally released. It settles over you gently now, like a soft blanket placed across your shoulders, not heavy, not overwhelming, just right, because you made it back to the room you avoided, back to the child you left waiting, back to the parts of yourself you thought were lost to time, and something inside you has changed. Quietly but unmistakably, you no longer walk through your life with that subtle ache of something missing. You no longer move with the same hurried emptiness. You no longer feel like a visitor inside your own chest. There is presence now. There is softness now. There is you now. And maybe as you sit in this moment, you can feel the difference. Your breath is just a little deeper. Your heart feels just a little clearer. Your mind feels just a little kinder. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer abandoning yourself. The child you once were is not behind a door anymore. They're not calling for you. They're not waiting. They are with you, woven into your voice, resting beneath your ribcage, guiding your tenderness, coloring your emotions with truth instead of fear. And now the question is gentle but important. What will you do with this new wholeness? Will you speak to yourself more softly? Will you breathe before you worry? Will you listen to your feelings instead of silencing them? Will you allow yourself to rest without guilt? Will you let yourself be loved without earning it? Only you can answer these. Only you can choose how you carry this reunion forward. But one thing is certain, you are no longer walking into the world as the adult who abandoned themselves. You are walking as someone who finally knows how to stay. And staying, truly staying, is the beginning of everything you've been searching for. Before you go, breathe with me for a moment. A deep inhale, a long exhale. Feel the child in you settle. Feel your heart soften. Feel the quiet inside you become a home. And if this journey touched something tender in you, if it opened a door you didn't know how to reach before, I'd love for you to let me know. Leave a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I read every single one with care. If this video felt like a safe place, consider subscribing. And if you feel called to support this work, you can send a super thanks. Every gesture helps this healing space reach more hearts that need it. For now, rest. You've returned to yourself, and that is a miracle worth honoring in silence.